Pantheon is the platform for extraordinary websites. When your site has a job to do, Pantheon enables website operations teams to iterate faster and achieve results. After more than a decade of providing best-in-class infrastructure and tools for WordPress and Drupal sites, we are proud to roll out early access support for modern front-end frameworks. Teams with early access will find that in addition to starter examples for WordPress and Drupal that configure them as headless CMSs, they can also spin up Gatsby and Next.js sites as well. Different teams pick this architecture for different reasons. Some site owners want to maximize the pace at which they can make changes to that public-facing front end in order to meet changing business needs. It's often safer to do high-velocity experimentation and changes to a front-end site when it is decoupled from higher-risk changes involving a back-end database. For some teams, the appeal comes from having a hard divide between back-end and front-end developers that should then be reflected in a clear line between back-end content management systems and the front-end presentation. Some developers have a strong preference for newer frameworks written in JavaScript that are often faster to adapt to changing needs than the decades-old systems that run much of the web. That faster pace of change for an individual team and the wider industry makes a big difference. Even if you could magically make the perfect website for today, you'd still need to change that site for the needs of next week, next month, and beyond. Iterating upon your site to set up future success requires a strong foundation like Pantheon. We know that teams looking to run decoupled architectures frequently get bogged down in the minutiae of setting up a headless CMS optimized for their front-end framework. That's why we're bundling together sensible defaults for WordPress and Drupal that set API configurations, caching metadata, and more. Content editors can use the systems they've trusted for years, and developers get out of the weeds and into the parts of your site that add value. Making a new front-end site on Pantheon is as simple as picking a framework, connecting to your GitHub account, pointing to your CMS, and watching the build come together. Let's see how it works at a high level. And as always, we should start from the end-user experience. A web team needs to deliver the best experience to the people visiting the site. For your website visitors to get a speedy and seamless experience, you need to serve that site from a content delivery network, or CDN, that has points of presence all over the world, so that wherever in the world your visitors are, your website is cached close by. Serving your site from a CDN is simple enough if it is purely static and unchanging. But even the teams finding the most success with static site generators are changing those sites all the time. That means when web developers push code changes up to a place like GitHub, the site needs to rebuild and push out to the static storage that sits behind the CDN. And that process can break in any number of ways. For instance, that build process can slow to a crawl if it's reading data out of a content management system that hasn't been tuned to play well with this process every time editors update an article. And many front-end development teams have come back around to dynamic server-side rendering of their sites in a way that again requires a deliberately configured connection to a CMS, ideally sitting behind its own CDN. Keeping track of all these moving pieces can overwhelm any web team. There's a good chance that watching all of these boxes and arrows appear in this video has been overwhelming. That's especially true if each box requires a different monthly bill or annual contract, or if each arrow requires reading separate documentation and talking to separate support teams. That's why Pantheon is putting more of these responsibilities under one roof. We think web teams deliver a better experience for their visitors when Pantheon enables better security, performance, and scalability best practices with a platform made for extraordinary websites.